Oh, great. All right, perfect. All right then. Well, so thanks for attending. My name is Ken Pizzo. I'm a solutions architect, actually a systems engineer, solutions architect. I guess you could use it interchangeably at ExaGrid. I've been in the backup business for more than 20 years. Started out at Legato back in the day. Have worked through different technologies at EMC, Data Domain, and HPE. So I've seen sort of the gamut of the different options for backing up, or what we used to call alternatives for backup. ExaGrid's been around for about 15 years. We're solely focused on backup. We do nothing else. Backup storage is what we do. We have, the only tiered backup solution on the market. And we make that distinction because there's some very important things about that architecture that we rely on to provide performance as well as reliability. We have a very large customer base of 4,000 customers. We have close to 400 published success stories of those customers. And we're installed across 80 countries. We have in-theater customer support worldwide. And so, we win a lot of awards. The ones that I like to kind of call out would be those that are sort of like the hardware vendor of the year, storage product of the year, vendor channel storage company of the year. So we're well known within the storage industry. If we're not well known among you folks that live and breathe in IT, certainly in the storage world, we're well known. So we work with a lot of different backup applications. In fact, we rely on a backup application. We don't have our own. So we require some kind of a data mover to get the data from your environment to us. That can be one of the traditional backup applications. It can also be application or database direct methods like SQL and Oracle. But we do require that there is some kind of a data mover. So we're not in the business of the data movement. We can work with all of them. We partner with as many as we possibly can and certify and test them all. And so when you look at sort of what customers are looking for in a backup storage solution, they're looking for things like WAN savings. If they're doing any kind of DR replication, they want to be able to optimize the data transmitted across the wire. They also want to shrink the footprint of the data stored. And so the inline dedupe appliances do that really well. The data domains of the world and so forth. And so that was early on sort of like a big game changer, a big requirement. Suddenly everybody had to have deduplication in their backup strategy. And so the other option that customers were using, in addition to backup appliances, would be the standard we'll call cheap disk, just straight disk, JBOD, or even the more high-end arrays that are dedicated for a backup. Nimbles, NetApp, Pure, so forth. The great thing about the standard disk, which again meets a lot of customer requirements on the performance side of things, would be backups as fast as disk. You want to be able to restore as fast as disk will read and write to. So when you look at sort of like the different requirements, we have storage optimization, and then we have performance. And so those are sort of the general requirements. Now, ExaGrid is tiered backup storage. So we meet the requirement for data deduplication or for storage optimization. We use dedupe for storage optimization. And we certainly can leverage our dedupe for WAN savings. So anytime you want to replicate from one site to another for DR purposes, like a hub and spoke topology, we deliver great WAN savings using our dedupe. We also, though, apart from what the traditional inline dedupe appliances do, we do optimize performance. We do deliver backups as fast as disk, restores as fast as disk. But additionally, as years have gone by, and most recent years, requirements have evolved even more. No longer is it just WAN optimization, performance. Now we are in the world of ransomware threats. So the backup repository needs to meet that challenge. So we also have a ransomware story. And we also address the other requirement that's always overlooked, and that is the ever-growing backup window. And so we work within the constraints that we architect within the constraints of a fixed backup window. So when you look at the different legacy storage options, either the dedupe appliances of the world, the inline dedupe, or the cheap disk. In fact, I would say more when we look at our.
I am terribly sorry to interrupt.
Oh, yes.
I have 3 vehicles that need to be moved. One of them is a Ford pickup truck, 166-1139. Anybody? There is a Jeep, a gray Jeep with an Arizona license plate. Anybody? There is a gray Honda, I think it's an SUV, 7 DXU, 987. Anybody? Okay, sorry to interrupt. Back on worries.
Thanks. Probably most environments that don't have ExaGrid that we discover, most of them are using just straight disk as opposed to an inline dedupe appliance. So really, the market's more saturated with cheap disk. So, great thing about the cheap disk is it's fast for backups, it's fast for restores. We're only working at the speed of disk. But the downside is, even though it's cheap, when you're talking about retaining multiple copies over time, it's no longer cheap. In fact, it's quite expensive. Also, it's vulnerable to ransomware attacks. It's exposed to your network, and you don't have any protections on the storage side in the event that you have a ransomware attack. So we like to look at ExaGrid as sort of like your last defense in a total security strategy. Once everything fails, when all of your threat detection, your virus scans, your malware scans, all that stuff, somehow the threat gets through, your last resort is going to be your backups. The inline dedupe appliances are also great because they can lower disk usage. They optimize WAN and storage. But the downside is, of course, they're slow for backup. They're slow for restores. They're exposed to the network just like your straight disk, and they're vulnerable to ransomware as well. ExaGrid sort of delivers the best of both worlds. So we have something called, or tiered, by the way, the 2 tiers are the landing zone and the repository tier. The landing zone is the ingestion part of the architecture. So your backup application will write directly to our landing zone. It looks just like straight disk. It behaves like straight disk in terms of its read and write capabilities. In fact, for backup performance, and this is our performance tier, by the way, for backup performance, when we go head-to-head against flash arrays, I'm talking about the high-end flash arrays that are out there, some more purposely built for backup. We actually outperform them for backup. We don't use solid state, by the way, in our architecture. It's all spinning disk. So how do we accomplish that? Well, we're optimized for backup. We only do backup. We're not creating an array that's multi-purpose and has to do a lot of different things. So we actually outperform solid state, even the ones that build their own NAND. And so the other tier would be the repository tier. So as soon as data lands into the landing zone as your backup takes place, we're immediately beginning to look at those objects and block and chunk them up into blocks, and then begin the dedupe process of copying that backup into the repository tier. So while data lands there, it also gets copied into the repository tier. And so when that happens, is that, of course, we're leveraging dedupe. We shrink the footprint of that backup. But the other great thing about that repository tier is it's not exposed to the network. It's hidden. In fact, nothing can see the repository tier except for the ExaGrid operating system. Now, it will inform the backup application of what's on there. So the backup app has to know. But you cannot get to it outside of ExaGrid. So it's sort of what we call immutable object storage. So when you look at the different options, inline dedupe, the reason why we avoid doing inline deduplication is because of all of the electronic bureaucracy you have to go through before you write your data. You have to do all your chunking, your hash computations, your lookups, your bucketing, and then you have to do your actual I/O. You have to do the whole thing in reverse when you have to restore. You have to rehydrate the data before it goes back. All of that takes cycles and it takes time. It's not performance optimized. So while dedupe is great for storing data and for optimizing WAN, it's not so great for performance. So we call our deduplication adaptive deduplication. It's neither pre-processing, it's not inline, it's not post-processing, we call it adaptive. So when we do our backup, we copy from the landing zone into the repository tier, and we do that deduplication at the same time while we're monitoring performance of the landing zone. What we don't want to do is we don't want to disrupt the speed of the backup or the speed of the restore. So we'll back off, we're talking millisecond, microsecond intervals. We'll back off on the dedupe process while we allow the higher priority restores and backups to take place. But as soon as those idle times are in there, we will go ahead and then do the dedupe. At the same time, if you have replication involved, we'll also replicate from the repository tier to another ExaGrid or to the cloud. And so the great thing about this is it's fast for restores, it's fast for backups because we're using the landing zone, but we're also able to retain a lot of copies in a small footprint. And we're able to accomplish that DR replication, also leveraging dedupe. So the benefits is that we are able to deliver the same requirements as the performance that the performance optimized systems deliver, as well as the space optimized systems. We can also do things like VM boots in seconds, and that's really critical if you're trying to, for example, if you're recovering from a ransomware attack. You want to be able to inspect your VMs by bringing them up and down pretty quickly without having to rehydrate and bring them back to their storage repository. So you can directly mount on the ExaGrid system an instantiated VM directly off ExaGrid, multiple of them, in fact. I don't really know the number. No one's ever told me how many we can sustain, but it's certainly more than one, which is a lot of what the other solutions provide. So we can give you fast delivery of backups, fast delivery of restores, but also we're able to deliver that real-time performance that your VMs would need if they have to actually run off our storage. So the repository tier is where everything is copied. So data comes to the landing zone, it gets copied into the repository tier. It's not network facing. You can't see it. You can't mount it. And that's where we retain the long-term copies. Now, data lives in the landing zone. Think of it as a cache. So data by default is designed to keep it there for about 7 days. Well, it's also copied into the repository tier. But we'll keep the freshest copies of your backups in the landing zone. And that's where you're going to be able to do your fastest restores, right? You seldom ever need to do a really fast SLA for data that's 6 months old, right? It's usually going to be your freshest data, your freshest backups that are going to provide your critical restores in a critical amount of time. So the benefits are it's low cost for long-term storage, and it's ransomware ready. This is an immutable object store. Nothing can get to it. We can't overwrite the data. The only thing that can control the data copies on the repository tier, again, is the ExaGrid operating system. We also have several different security features built in. We have certainly the ransomware protection ransomware recovery, we also have the built-in security checklist. When you log into the ExaGrid system, seldom ever have to after you set it up. But when you do, you're reminded of about 10 different things that you need to do to lock down that system and make it more secure than it already is. Things like, enabling your role-based access control, your 2FA, your TLS certificates, your secure HTTPS, your IP-based whitelists, all that stuff is controlled by the security role. And so you're constantly reminded that there are things you got to do. So you see red X's, we want to see those all turn to green check marks to know that you've done additional things to really lock down the system. So retention time lock is a feature that we introduced several years ago. It was a game changer. So the scenario is that when your backup application just naturally expires your backups every day, backups expire every week, backups expire, and they need to be deleted off the system. And so the backup application will go ahead and make the request to the storage to delete the backup. It's gone, no longer needed. We will actually keep the backup in the repository tier for about 10 days. Give or take. You can adjust that down or up to 30 days. But we have a retention time lock, which means we delay that delete. We acknowledge the delete back to the backup application. The backup app thinks, oh yeah, the backup's gone. But in fact, it's not gone. We actually keep it on the ExaGrid system in the repository tier. Again, for that duration, default is 10 days. So that's great for just natural deletion of backups. Oh, that backup expired yesterday. I know I can get it back. But the real benefit here is in the event of a ransomware attack. Ransomware not only will encrypt your primary data, it knows how to talk to your backup application. It knows how to talk to Veeam. It knows how to talk to Commvault. It knows how to, the ransomware is smart enough to know how to instruct those apps to delete your backups. So you're encrypted, and now it's gone in and deleted your backups. And so what will happen with ExaGrid is that the data lives in the landing zone. It's exposed to the network. The backup app sees it. That data is gone. And in fact, it will probably acknowledge the deletions back to the backup app. But remember, we have copies of everything in the repository tier. And even though we acknowledge the deletes, in fact, the backups are still there. So what will happen is ransomware comes in, deletes all your backups. Your backups are gone. We have delay deletes or retention time lock enabled. By the way, it's always enabled. It's not something you can turn off. You can just change the date or the duration, rather, the days, number of days. But when the deletes take place, and certainly back to your primary storage gets deleted. So what happened is that if this happens during, in your normal life as a backup admin, you can actually roll back to a point in time prior to when the ransomware deleted the backups. You can do that yourself, pretty easy to do, or you can call ExaGrid support in a panic. They know how to do it, and they'll walk you through it pretty quickly. They're happy to do it for you. In fact, all of our support engineers are not only trained in ExaGrid, they're trained in your backup application. We have Commvault support engineers, we have Veeam, we have backup. We have a bunch of different specialists that know backup applications. So we're not going to be finger pointing. Oh, it's the backup app. Go talk to the backup people. We'll know if it's the backup or if it's ExaGrid if there's a problem. And we'll initiate a support ticket on your behalf with the backup app if we need to. So the other thing that we will address is the ever-growing backup window. So this is an ExaGrid. ExaGrid is what we call scale-out architecture. we differentiate from the scale-up architecture. Scale-up being that you have an array with a head unit and disk shelves of some sort, some type of arrangement like that. So that would be scale-up. So when you want to add additional storage capacity, you can do that by adding additional disks to your system. That's scale-up. What that doesn't do is it doesn't address your backup window issue. You still have the same bottleneck coming in and going out. ExaGrid is scale out. Every appliance is its own independent part of the system. So you may start out with one ExaGrid system, but over time, you may expand. When you do add an additional system, that now becomes part of a single target for your backup application. You can add up to 32 ExaGrid systems in a single system, and they will all act and behave and appear to the backup application as a single target. So Veeam, through Sober, Commvault, Fill and Spill, whatever they call it, Net Backup, they all know how to individually identify the individual nodes and collectively treat them as a single target. So the backup application in conjunction with ExaGrid are sort of doing this virtualization, if you will. If we add our largest model, which is what we call an EX84, that 84 means that, in the model name, means that we have 84 terabytes of capacity in our landing zone, plus an additional 84 terabytes in a repository tier. So a total of 168 terabytes on that system. When you put 32 of those together, you have 2.7 petabytes of full backup landing zone capacity, which means if you have a full backup that exceeds into the petabyte range, then our system can, again, you can treat it as a single target. You can mix and match models. We have 6 of them. I'll show you that in a second. But it doesn't matter what model you put in there and mix in there, or even the age. We don't force product obsolescence. So we're not going to come to you after 5 years of buying the system and say, hey, we're going to end support on the system. You got to refresh it and buy a whole new one. Do a forklift upgrade. Doesn't happen with ExaGrid. We have systems that are out in the field that have been out there for 12, 13, 14 years that are still in service. As long as they run, you can use it, and you can incorporate that into a system, into a scale-out system that consists of older and new models. So you have not only investing investing in your technology and protecting your investment of that technology, but you continue to grow with ExaGrid as time goes by. These are the different models from EX10 to 84. Again, each of the numbers is important because it means that we can back up a full backup of 10 terabytes, 18 terabytes, 27, 36, 52, 84. But we also have an additional amount of that space in our repository tier for the long-term copies. So the rule of thumb is the more copies you have, the cheaper we become. The longer term your retention, the more price optimized the solution is. So for DR, I mentioned replication. We optimize replication through our deduplication. Get about 50 to 1 reduction in the amount of data sent and transmitted. But you can replicate to another ExaGrid system somewhere in another data center, in one of your service providers. You can go directly to the cloud. We have a cloud tier that essentially provides a virtual appliance in public cloud through either Azure or AWS. The benefit of that, or by the way, you can also use your backup app to just send the backup directly and bypass ExaGrid to the cloud. That happens all the time. People write locally to ExaGrid, but they also send a copy off to the cloud. We don't even see it. We don't monitor it. It just goes to the backup app. If you do choose to use ExaGrid in the cloud, for Veeam, for example, we'll give you an additional 15 to 1 optimization. So cloud spend would be a lot less with ExaGrid than it would be if you were just sending your standard copies through the backup application. So for example, Veeam, I think it's like 2 to 1. So you can send it 2 to 1 to the cloud, or you can send it through ExaGrid and get about up to 15 to 1. It's only a repository tier. We don't have a landing zone because we don't back up cloud workloads, at least right now. We're only on an on-prem solution. But you can recover it directly from the cloud or recover it directly from an online appliance, on-prem appliance, either way.
Question.
Yes?
The box, actual free box in your data center and the cloud need to be same model, like a
No. Nope. Does not do the same model or the same age or, yeah. So we obscure that part from the backup application, other than the capacity. So our support is pretty stellar. Anybody familiar with Net Promoter Scoring? So we have an NPS rating of 81. That's a range of -100 to a +100. Veeam also has, I think, 81 or 80. We're both right up there. When you buy ExaGrid, you're assigned a level 2 support engineer. You have their name, their email address, their direct phone number. You can call them anytime. And they're likely the ones that are going to be dealing with your issue. And they're also trained in the backup app, so they know your backup application. Everything's self-installable. So when we ship a system to you, you plug in, you rack it, connect it to your network. That same support engineer you'll be introduced to, if you don't already know them, and they'll be the ones that actually do the remote configuration and installation. The process takes about 3 hours altogether. We don't charge for it. In fact, we don't charge for anything other than the ExaGrid system. We have 2 or 3 line items on our quotes: the system, support, and potentially NIC cards that you might need, different variations of interfaces. Everything that we offer, including retention time lock, we don't license anything separately at all. Everything is included. When we have new features that come out, like when we did introduce retention time lock, every existing customer got to benefit from that game-changing enhancement. We also do health status monitoring. We're constantly monitoring the system. We're constantly looking at what is happening. We use built-in artificial intelligence. That AI will know your normal behavior for deletions of backup, so it will monitor over time that maybe you have about 10 deletions of backups a day through normal expiration. If we see something deviate from the norm that we've detected, we'll raise an alert, because that usually means that something nefarious is going on. Deduplication. When we see dedupe rates drop dramatically, that again is usually a sign that the data looks very different than what we've seen before, right? That means that why is it different? It's probably encrypted. It means you probably have a ransomware attack. We're going to raise an alert there as well. So as soon as you discover that ransomware attack, you put ExaGrid into recovery mode. It's locked down. You can't do anything to it other than read from it, and you can go ahead and invoke that RTL reset. No hidden costs. Everything's included in the support program. You have price protection. So when you purchase ExaGrid, explain price protection.
Price protection is just such that you say you get 50% off on your initial purchase, you'll always maintain that discount percentage. While pricing may change, it's a hard number, your discount percentage will be fixed. And that's for everything, support, as well as your actual hardware purchase.
Yeah, maintenance, whatever you paid for maintenance as a percentage of your total will remain that percentage moving forward. We're not going to give you a sweet deal the first time and then turn around and ream you for your refreshes and for your expansions. Our maintenance is always a percentage of the hardware price that you pay. No forklift upgrades. You use what you've got. Keep using it until it dies. So really, we allow additional appliances to be added at any time. Online, you just simply connect it up to your network. There is no physical interlinking to be done. It's just put it on the network and it will just be discovered by the rest of the system. And again, we don't obsolete product, and there are no hidden costs.
We have customers that actually have our original product that is part of their existing system. Still seen as one object by Veeam or Commvault.
So really our main differentiators are we have the landing zone, the repository tier, we have a comprehensive ransomware story and security features. There are two roles in ExaGrid, the security admin and the backup admin. The backup admin can't change security features like RTL. Only the security admin can make those changes. The backup admin can request it in their UI, their part of the UI. The security admin has to go in and log in through 2FA and approve it. The security admin cannot make that change on their own. Only the backup admin can do it. So it's like two keys, right, to launch your missiles. That's how we've designed the system. So anything security-wise must be done by the security role. And it requires 2FA to log in to do that. So we've really locked down the system.